today finds us in Sleeping Bear Dunes National Park, and we are driving the Pierce Stocking Scenic Trail. So, Pierce Stocking, 1908 to 1976, wanted to preserve this area's natural beauty. In the early 1960s, the local lumberman began envisioning a haven of rest called Sleeping Bear Dunes Park. It opened to the public in 1967. For just $2.75 per vehicle, visitors could drive a 14-mile scenic roadway, relax at picnic areas, and delight in spectacular views of Lake Michigan, Glen Lake, and the sand dunes. When Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore purchased Stockings Park in 1976, they renamed it Philip Hart Nature Trail after the U.S. Senator from Michigan, who fought to establish the lakeshore 6 years earlier. Staff considered removing the scenic drive to protect the fragile dunes. Ultimately, they realized that Stocking had, if you want people to love this earth enough to conserve it, they also have to be able to enjoy it. So the drive remained, and the lakeshore renamed it in honor of Stocking and his resolve to preserve this place for future generations. This map contrasts the loop you're driving today in orange and Stocking's original route in purple. Have you ever seen a covered bridge with the National Park Service arrowhead on it? The covered bridge was one of the picturesque details that Pierce Stocking included in the Scenic Drive covered bridges. Usually associated with New England and Pennsylvania, they were developed to protect wooded bridges from rain and snow, which can cause rotting of the timbers. It was cheaper to repair the roof than to rebuild a new bridge. The sides of the original bridge were largely consumed by porcupines, which seemed to relish man-made structures more than native wood in the forest. The present bridge has a high roof to provide a 13-foot, 6-inch vehicle clearance. This pull-off is intended to let you linger a moment to view the bridge or to photograph it. Stop number 2, Glen Lake, was once a bay. More than 10,000 years ago, enormous rivers of ice covered the land in front of you. They gouged the earth like plows and left piles of sand and gravel called moraines in their wake. In fact, you're standing in one of these piles now. Eventually, the glaciers thawed, turning their deep tracks into large lakes of meltwater. One of these lakes, Lake Nipissing, gradually became Lake Michigan as its water level fell. Meanwhile, waves were eroding beaches and bluffs. Currents carried sediment along the shore to form sandbars. By about 2,000 years ago, these currents had deposited enough on either side of an island, what we now know as Alligator Hill, to landlocked Glen Lake. Over time, grasses and trees took root. Today, this forested sandbar is where you'll find the town of Glen Arbor and a beach of ancient sand. Glen Lake, with its remarkably blue waters, is famous for its beauty. The lake appears divided into two parts by the constriction at the Narrows Bridge. Big Glen Lake reaches 130 feet deep in places, while Little Glen, closest to us, is only 12 feet deep. Different shades of blue indicate lake levels. Glacial erosion carved out both lakes during the Ice Age. In post-glacial times, a sandbar developed, separating Glen Lake from Lake Michigan. Both the D.H. Day Campground and the village of Glen Arbor are located on that sandbar. The hill on the north or the left side of Little Glen Lake is called Alligator Hill because of its shape. It is a product of the Ice Age and early post-glacial times. Glaciers carried a tremendous load of sand, gravel, and other rock debris frozen with ice. When the ice melted, the runoff streams deposited great piles of sediment to form the hill. Imagine how thick the ice must have been to have left hills of debris hundreds of feet high. We are at Picnic Mountain. Have a bite to eat while perched on the tallest dune in the park. Not surprising at all. Picnic Mountain is a great place to stretch your legs and enjoy a relaxing picnic lunch. And you can see the lake.
It's awfully windy up here.
The first people of this place. Imagine you're the first person to ever take in this view. It's 8,000 years ago. The glaciers have melted, dense forests are growing back. You live lightly on this ground. You hunt, fish, and gather other harvests from the land and lakes. Traders arrive with copper and other goods. Eventually you're growing crops, decorating pottery, and boiling sugar from maple sap at camps around Glen Lake. Your descendants, the Anishinaabe, form a confederacy of three fires: the Ottawa and Ojibwe of the upper Great Lakes and the Potawatomi further south. In time, Europeans arrive and war breaks out over furs. In 1836, with sadness in your hearts, your kin sign a treaty allowing Euro-Americans to occupy the land. Yet, unlike other tribes, they tenaciously resist removal and remain a vibrant part of northern Michigan today. Welcome to Dune World. Conservation was not always understood at Sleeping Bear Dunes. After D.H. Day died in 1928, his daughter Marion married his chauffeur, Louis Warnes. The newlyweds took over their father's store in Glen Haven and began renting horses to visitors who wanted a unique view of the dunes. When Louis had an idea, he fit a 1934 Ford convertible with balloon tires and took people on a 14-mile circuit for 25 cents. It was a hit. Over the next 4 decades, he and Marion updated their Dunesmobiles 3 times and took thousands on safari into Michigan's Sahara. Eventually, environmental attitudes shifted, and in 1978, the new National Lakeshore stopped the dune rides to protect the fragile ecosystem. For the same reason, the park rerouted Pierce Stockings Drive to remove segments that snake through the sand. From this trailhead, you can take a 1.5-mile walk on one now named the Cottonwood Trail. Traces of the road remain, as do invasive plants that took roots in its gravelly soil.
This trail is supposed to lead to a 450-foot overlook of Lake Michigan. We're in Sleeping Bears National Park. Definitely some blue sky today, and water back there looks really blue too. Tell I'm not used to walking
In sand.
in sand. I'm glad the Appalachian Trail wasn't in sand for the most part. I need that shirt, the Out of Breath Hiking Club. It's 450 feet down there, and it's $3,000 if they got to come get you and you can't get back up. There's a rescue fee. Get a picture of that sign. Shoes cost $3,000. Washington with this wind. All I can think of is the first movie of Planet of the Apes, when they went into the Forbidden Zone, where they found the doll baby in the cave that was human speaking. I'm sure some of you saw that movie.